Good morning, and thank you so much for that lovely introduction for all four of us. And I see a lot of young crowd here today, especially the school kids. I'm very happy to see that people from school are still looking ahead into marketing. So I think the topic I will just briefly introduce so that everyone has an idea as to what we are doing. So today we are here to talk about growth, leadership, and strategy, especially when it comes to the businesses and all the big corporates that we see. Before I start off with my rounds of questioning, I would like to hear from my authors about what's their take on all three of it.
A very good morning to all of you, friends. I'm sorry I have a bad voice. I have a sore throat and a bad voice. And believe me, my voice is better than what you are getting right now. So, first thing first, a very special word of thank you to all of you who have come over here. You know, the three of us are writers, authors. Our coordinator is also, moderator is also a content creator. Now, the journey of a book starts with the author writing it, but it does not end with the publisher publishing it. The journey of a book ends when the reader reads it. And all of you and out in the wide world are the readers, the potential readers of our books. So we must thank you very much for that. I also find a lot of very young faces in the audience. To them, I will say that please don't get wary of the big words like leadership, customer insight, marketing, and all that, As a leadership author, I know that you are the leaders. You know what leadership is. Leadership is influencing somebody, guiding somebody into coming into a particular, acting into a particular direction. And if you are the monitor of your school, you are a leader. If you are the captain of your football team, you are the leader. Even in your home, if you are showing your parents how to deal with, how to handle technology tools, you are a leader. So you are very much a leader. Get interested in the topic and not feel wary of that. Now, coming to the topic of my book is the 10x Leader, Breaking the Rules of Conventional Leadership. Now, this is something which is very dear to me. I'm a contrarian thinker. I would like to go against the current. And so this book is that. But before I introduce the book, let me, I'm reminded of the story from, anecdote about Albert Einstein, the great physicist. He had set the question paper for the final exam of his students. But when the exam started, his PA saw the paper and he was alarmed. He ran to Einstein and told him that, sir, these are the questions which we had set last year. Einstein looked at the paper and he smiled. He said, yes, these are the questions that were set last year, but this year the answers have changed. So in the 21st century, VUCA world, the VUCA is the acronym for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. So in this VUCA world, 21st century VUCA world, the meaning of all these three words like growth, leadership, and strategy have changed. Growth is no longer mere metric transition from one point to the other. It doesn't mean merely having a fat balance sheet. It doesn't mean having more customers only. It doesn't mean having only business expansion, geographical expansion. So it also needs to have development. It has to go with development. It has to go, the growth has to have a purpose. Your business have to have a purpose beyond profits. Your growth has to have resilience. Likewise, leadership. The leadership, and that's the core of my book. The leadership theories and templates that we are using today were developed in the 19th century industrial age. And they reflect the psychology, the modus operandi, and the values of the industrial age. Now, today we are 300 years afterwards. We are in the knowledge society, knowledge economy. And we are using the same templates, same value systems, same structures. And so naturally these leadership systems are failing, and you see the disappointment everywhere. So what kind of new leadership should be there to replace that model, And that's what I have discussed in my book. And likewise, so the essence of it is that leadership is no longer sitting at the top of the organization and guiding and dictating. Leaders are not not required to be perfect. They can be imperfect. Leaders need not have necessarily a charisma, right? So there are other methods of leading also. So when you are today, if you are recruiting for the leadership positions, don't look for people only look for people who have a very good past record. That could have been in a different situation. Today's situation could be different altogether, So you have to see whether the person has a growth mindset or a fixed mindset. You have to see whether he has a IQ and EQ are necessary, but whether he has an AQ also. The adversity quotient, what is his adversity quotient? How is he going to respond in times of adversity? Like, IQ refers to the past achievements, EQ refers to the current, and AQ refers to the future, how in the future you are going to react. Likewise, there are other factors that you need to also look into. So the leadership meaning and context also have changed. At the same time, strategies. Your strategies have not to be annual. It has to be very agile. It has to be transformative. Right. So the meaning and context of all these things have changed. I think we will discuss it later further on as the discussion goes on. So thank you very much. Over to.
Thank you, Pawan sir. I think, you can continue.
Great, thank you. I see a lot of students in the audience. How many of you want to become marketeers? Anybody wants to become a marketeer? You can put your hand up. So I'm not surprised because I discovered marketing at the age of 21. And I've written a book called The Practical Marketeer, right? So I always wondered, how did I become a marketeer? And marketeer are often key towards unpacking business success, right? Which is what the topic for today's conversation is, right? So why marketing? And I kept thinking, what did I want to do in life? I actually wanted to become a physicist. I mean, I would have been doing superstrings and Big Bang and black holes, right? Why the hell, where did marketing come from? And why did I discover it so late? Because, when I was in school, I liked science. I got a 97 in my physics. So I decided to do engineering. And everybody who's doing good in science does engineering, right? So I did engineering and I hated it. So I hated civil engineering. So I thought maybe I should do computers. I picked up a book on C++. The only thing I hated more than civil engineering was C++. So I said, now what do I do, right? So maybe I should do an IES. So I tried to prepare for IES. I didn't like it. Maybe IAS. I didn't like that either. So in the third year of engineering, when I had eliminated all options possible, and I'm like, what am I going to do? Am I going to start selling, burgers on the sidewalk? What am I going to do in life? That's when I met these very interesting people coming in a train ride from Bombay to Delhi in NITI. They were studying in IIM Bombay. So that's when I discovered marketing. And I just thought back, as a child or as a student, why did I want to do physics? So the reason why I wanted to do physics is because when I was a 12-year-old, that's when I read this book called The Brief History of Time by Stephen Hawking. And I was surprised that, a topic as complicated as physics, right, as complicated as particle physics, as Big Bang, as astronomy, can be made so easy that an 11-year-old can understand it, right? And I wondered, why hasn't somebody done this for marketing? Marketing is such a glorious subject. You get to do such fascinating stuff. And as we go through the conversation and I tell you about the stories, the kind of joy that I've had in the last 20 years has been incredible. But why don't people know about this? Why don't students know about this? Why don't people in colleges know about this? Why do I need to find out about what marketing is in the third year of engineering, right? And that's why I wrote this book called The Practical Marketeer. The Practical Marketeer is actually an easy guide that anybody, and believe you me, the secrets in this book are those which 50-year-olds don't know, right? I used to always wonder, why don't my bosses just get this? It's so easy. This is how decisions are made, right? Why isn't this knowledge so democratic that everybody can find out what marketing really is? How do we hire celebrities? Why do we hire celebrities? Why do we do consumer promos? Why is there a Tazo free in your Uncle Chips, right? Why is there, what does this whole Kuch Meeta Ho Jaye mean, right? Why do we do Britannia Khao World Cup Jao? What really drives all of this thinking, right? How does one brand, who's nothing, like a fog about 10 years back, did not even exist. Today they dominate the category. Why did that happen? What are the secrets towards actually driving business success, business change? How does it all come together? And how can it be written in a manner that everybody gets it? Whether you're a school student, you're a college, you're a working professional, you could be a 60-year-old. But if you want to build your own personal brand, you want to market your own product, your wares, that's what the practical marketer does for you, right? So I hope you'll enjoy the conversation.
Nice. Now, after two very, am I audible?
It's not on.
It's on. Yeah, am I audible now?
Yes.
Okay, good. Yeah. Okay, so after two very different pitches, now I'm wondering where should I pitch myself? But I'll tell you a little bit about myself. So my journey started very similar to yours. I did engineering because that's what you did by default if you didn't want to do medicine. So I did engineering. I didn't like it. I even worked as an engineer for a year, and I didn't like it even after that. So then I decided to go to a B school, and advertising is something that I always enjoyed. And I used to wonder, looking at ads, saying, why do they make these ads like that? And what goes behind that advertising? And the other thing that always interested me was human psychology. Even though I didn't take psychology, I went to engineering instead because my dad was a psychology professor. So I read a lot of psychology books while growing up when I was your age, without really understanding them. But I guess it formed an innate understanding of people and an innate liking of the subject. So when I went to B school, I realized that I loved psychology, I was good at statistics and analytics, and I loved marketing. And I realized that consumer insights or market research is a subject that interests me a lot. So I decided to pursue my career in that. Now what consumer insights does is that it's the behind the scenes, if you like, of the glamorous marketing. It's the rigor and the gore that goes behind the scenes. And the fact is that you understand people as to why do they behave the way they behave, why do they like certain products, why do they like certain advertising, why do they reject certain advertising, and so on and so forth. And that understanding forms the backbone of a lot of marketing decisions and the strategic decisions of a business. And if you look at any growing brands, if you look at any growing business, they're based on solid consumer understanding. They're built on solid consumer insights. And I love that field, and I thought that that is not what boring market research is about. Market research is a process to get some data, but insights is where you sort of connect the dots and connect the data points and come up with an understanding of consumers that can unlock business opportunities. And that's why I went to the insights field. Now I was lucky enough to work for about 20 years in company Hindustan Unilever Limited, which is one of the largest consumer products companies in India and globally. And I worked on various different brands, from Lux and Dove to Surf Excel to Ponds to Knorr and so on. And it gave me a fascinating understanding of how people use different categories and what sort of advertising works. I was also lucky enough to work in 4 different countries, including India, and then Singapore and Thailand and London on different categories, understanding consumers in different parts of the world. How do they eat food? How do they consume food? How do they cook meals? What does beauty mean to them? What does hygiene mean to them? And the more you look at people across the world, the more you realize that they are actually very similar to each other. The fundamental needs and the fundamental anxieties, the fundamental desires and the aspirations are not very different. They manifest themselves, of course, quite differently because the culture is quite different. So how do you overlay the cultural understanding to fundamental human desire to create products and to create advertising and to create businesses is what Consumer Insights does. And that's what has kept me going in this field for about 28 years. So I think 3 of us are coming from quite different contexts, but are helping businesses sort of grow and develop further from different perspectives. So I'm quite looking forward to this conversation because of that.
Oh, thank you so much. While Saurabh was speaking, it just came to my mind that he spoke, that you said that you would have been studying black holes and galaxies, but none of us would have known about that if Discovery hadn't marketed it well.
Yeah.
So I think you never really escape marketing. None of us would have known the taglines that we do, 7 up, Dar ke aage jeete and all that, if it hadn't been marketed out, right? So I think marketing is something that we never really escape, and we are always doing it irrespective of whether you're doing it for businesses or you're doing it for personal branding. So coming back to the set of questions that I have here, I think businesses changed the way they operated, and that is one thing that is always common. It has changed. That's the only constant that we have. And COVID was, the pandemic that came was something where we saw a tremendous shift in how the businesses operated, how the leaders operated, and how they thought about it, how the marketing changed, how consumer behavior was studied. So I would really like to know that what is your take on how the businesses went through a shift during that COVID period?
Well, COVID taught us two very critical lessons, which I have discussed at length in my book. The first is adaptability, and the second is resilience. You know, adaptability is the art of adapting to a particular situation, to an adverse situation. When the COVID-19 struck us, all of a sudden, the entire population changed its behavior pattern. The offices became online. New applications like Zoom and others, WebEx and others also came up. And, you know, even it was heartening to see even children, small children, taking tuitions online, you know. Students going online, officers going online. So it was quite an exhilarating experience, you know. We didn't have PPE kits at that time, which was very, very essential for managing the fighting COVID. We didn't have ventilators, we didn't have, hand sanitizers, you know. And we were not producing this in this country, you know, we were deficient about it. But then we started not only, factory changed their production lines, we started not only producing them for our country, for our needs, but even exporting it, you know. Come to think of that, we responded very well. Not only adapted to it, but our resilience was so great that, believe me, I mean, the traditional meaning of resilience has been that bouncing back in the times of adversity, that you come back to your original point. But no, the current meaning of resilience is bouncing beyond. That you not only come back, but you do something better than what you were, you know. And that's what we did. It's a matter of great pride for humanity that within a very short period of time, we could get an anti-COVID virus vaccine, you know. Anti-COVID vaccine for the humanity. And equally important was that 2 billion doses were administered to the population in India within a very short time. So these are the moments which fills you with a sense of pride. You know, the vaccine for AIDS has not still been, AIDS is another virus, but it's still not been discovered. You know. But for COVID, we didn't have much knowledge about its genome and other things, but still we could do it. So that's a great bouncing back. And that's what Darwin said, that it's not the strongest who will survive, but the most adaptability, whosoever has the highest adaptability, that species will survive. And that's what, you know the traditional story of the willow and the oak. In a field there was a willow tree and an oak tree. Whenever the storm came, the willow felt humiliated because it had to dance to the tune of the oak, to the storm, while the oak tree stood tall in all the storms. But one day a hurricane came. While the willow tree was still dancing to the tune of the wind, the oak tree was uprooted. So develop adaptability, and that's very, very critical for leadership. You got to adapt yourself to the situations. For institutions, it's very, very critical. Without adaptability, particularly in the current situation of where there's a lot of changes and disruptions in the environment, you won't be able to survive, whether you are a person or an individual or an institution. Thank you.
So I think the pandemic was a fascinating time, and in some ways, all of us are the pandemic's children, right? Because our life fundamentally changed, right? What it did to business was again very fascinating, right? So what Sir just talked about adaptability. How did we respond? And I was working with Britannia at that time. How did we respond to the pandemic? See, the most important thing for a business leader or for marketeers is to have the ear to the ground. You need to know what's going on, right? And how do we do that? As marketeers, we go out there, we meet consumers, we do market visits, we visit trade, right? So our managing director, Varun Berry, at that point in time, as he got it in the pandemic, he did something very simple. To all of us in the marketing team and across the entire organization, he just gave us phone numbers. He gave us phone numbers of all the retailers, of all the dukandar, right? So we have a total base of almost 1 million retailers, right? 1 million shopkeepers. He just gave us all their phone numbers and said, you are sitting at home, that's not a problem. Just make phone calls. So we would all call 20, 30 different retailers every day and understand ki kya maal bik raha hai. What's selling, what's not selling. And we would use that to decide our strategy. So one of the things that I picked up is ki boss, mera to maal bahut bikne wala hai. I was selling Britannia cheese at that time. So he was like, why is Britannia cheese going to sell, right? I said, ki boss, we sell as a country, we consume 2,000 crores of cheese every year. Okay, 2,000 crores of cheese is what we sell. Now, of the 2,000 crores of cheese, 1,200 crores is sold by Domino's, Pizza Hut and food chains and restaurants. Restaurants are shut. People are not going to stop eating cheese. So what they're going to do is they're going to start making cheese dishes. And that's what happened in the pandemic, right? So in the pandemic, everybody started making pizzas at home, learning how to make a pizza, making pasta at home. So the sheer number of people actually making dishes with cheese actually gained by the pandemic. And I was like, that's a learned habit. Once you learned how to make a pizza, you're not going to wait for an order only, right? So I grew my cheese business by 70%. So I said, because it is growing, I need to just fan the fire. So what do? I reached out to India Food Network. We did this series called Britannia Cheese Food Chef. And we got Saif Ali Khan for free. So don't tell anybody that. But Saif Ali Khan actually had hours parked with India Food Network. And I said, I'll buy those hours because I want to make a series. So I created this series called Britannia Cheese Food Chef, where we sold a lot of Britannia cheese and we made lovely dishes, right? But that's what marketing is. Marketing is about living in the moment, living in the now, saying that what's going on. Okay, all the world has gone to hell, and that's what happened to us in the pandemic, right? But is there an opportunity? How are things changing? How are people changing? What are they learning? Right? And then there are fads and there are trends. Those are trends. So we have learned how to make dishes with cheese. That's a trend. It will continue. Amul Cool launching haldi flavored ice cream is a fad. It's not going to last. Nobody wants to have haldi ice cream. But that was launched during the pandemic, right? So you see a lot of these funny things that happen in marketing, where people do absolutely funny things to take use of the moment. And that's where marketing goes wrong, because you pick up a fad. But a fact that, through the pandemic, I need somebody to deliver something to my house. I can't go down. I'm scared. Led to the whole quick service delivery revolution. The Blinkit, Swiggy and Instamarts today probably would never have been born if it was not for the pandemic. I mean, we're not so lazy as people, right? We're okay to go down and buy chai and shakkar and chai patti. But now we order it 3 times in the morning, even before breakfast. Because the pandemic allowed us to use that as a right, as a behavior. And you have a totally new industry of quick service delivery professionals coming up. That led to a whole new change. So there's a new thing now called the gig economy. Everybody then talked about the fact that, I need to do a side hustle. I got time, right? In my side hustle, I wrote my book. I wouldn't have written it had it not been for the pandemic. But that side hustle became mainstream. So 10 years back, when I was talking about in campus, I thought I'll pick up a book on C++, but everybody was taking a job with a BPO. Right? Business process outsourcing was the scene. People used to sit between night 11 till morning 6 o'clock being a call center for the US. Now that suddenly started changing because people learned that they could do things sitting at home with their computer. And today there are 25 million professionals who are working in the space of content, influencer marketing, out of their day job. And that's a huge change. So the world today is nothing like the world 6-7 years back. So this observation of this change, how are things changing? How are consumers behaving? How are, what are those things which are fickle, which are going to go out of the window, which are those which are long-term trends, which are going to build? Why are they building? Hence, how do I take use of this opportunity, right? That's what marketeers do, and that's what great leaders enable.
Great. So I think interesting example. So we at Unilever obviously went through a similar experience at time of COVID. So how you understand consumers changed a lot. So instead of being able to do surveys or focus group discussions, a lot of conversations shifted online. So the online digital research in India and across the world actually just suddenly shot up and picked up dramatically, which otherwise may or may not have happened. But also beyond a point, consumers were not willing to come and do an online conversation with you because everybody was sitting at home and working and whatever, managing homes. So therefore, so it changed from calling them up or doing WhatsApp groups or WhatsApp conversations is what we shifted to. So the way you did research changed, obviously, but I think there are two fundamental things that changed in COVID. One of the things that happened was very rarely does it happen that the marketeers and the business owners and the CEOs and people were exactly in the same boat as consumers, because everybody was locked up at home and everybody was afraid of death. And everybody was scared of their parents and relatives. So everybody's boat was in the same storm, as somebody put it very nicely. Which means that the empathy that you had with consumers for the first time was very, very close. And you really understood what the consumers were going through, which has never happened before. And not something that we wish would happen again. But that empathy made a lot of difference in the decisions that businesses made. Like some of the examples Saurabh gave. Because we could really understand consumers, somebody really next to me, and empathize with them a lot more. That's one. The other thing that happened was that, obviously because everybody was at home, things changed at home. So some people were, lucky enough to have help at home, etc., were able to manage, and therefore life was comfortable for them. But for majority of the people in India, life was not very comfortable. And I think the one set of people who suffered perhaps the most were women. Because imagine that she's sitting at home, if she's a housewife, for example, sitting at home, cooking for people, etc. Now the entire family is at home. Not for 2-3 days when you have fun, but for weeks and months at together. So the amount of pressure she had to go through, because the entire family is at home demanding everything at home, made her really miserable. And the life of working women was even worse, because she was expected to deliver, work from home, but she was also everybody was expecting her to do things at home. So the life for her was far more complicated. And when we spoke to women, particularly working women, they were itching for the offices to reopen. They're like, I just want to get out of home and be at office for 8 or 10 hours because, I don't want to deal with this home anymore. Or I want my husband to go, my kids want to go to school so that I can have some peace. Which also made us fundamentally relook at how the workplace should be redesigned. And when people come back, what are they going to expect? How the workplaces should be redesigned in the long term. Because work from home will be common and people wouldn't want to work in office all the time. So how the offices should be redesigned, how you should look at women employees and what are the kind of things that you provide for them, and obviously how you look at women consumers. So I think the COVID therefore gives you an opportunity gave us an opportunity to look at the world differently and do the business differently and shape our workplaces differently, which is quite interesting, and therefore fascinating consumer insights came around that.
That was quite nice. That the point you made that for the first time the marketeers had empathy with the customers.
Yeah, as in not. Otherwise, you're sitting in an ivory tower, looking at research reports, talking to people on the group discussions.
Continue with that empathy, so that because every day I get 10-20 calls from marketeers.
Yeah.
Buy this, take a loan.
Correct.
Take a credit card.
But it's much easier to do now because now you've experienced that. You've experienced the same feelings that they had, even though you might have had some more privileges if you were more affluent and so on.
Since we are talking about change that comes around in the consumer, I think a lot of corporates also shifted to administering vaccines when the employees were asked to join back. And that brings me to the topic of building trust. because employees needed to have trust कि ये मुझे Covishield दे रहे हैं या Covaxin दे रहे हैं और कौन सा better है. I think that was a debate that was going on. So when we talk about trust, how are we looking at building trust in brands from a perspective of leadership, from a perspective of consumer insights, or marketing for that matter? Because a lot of cases also came up in fake marketing. इन्होंने हमको गलत बताया, हम इसमें case कर देंगे type. So what are your insights or quick views about that?
Should I go? Okay, we'll start the reverse now. So I think at the fundamental, you need insights about what does the brand stand for, and therefore what's the credibility of the brand, what's the equity of the brand, and what is it therefore the brand should be doing to sort of build trust and build the equity of the brand, which comes from several things that drive the brand, several things that drive the category, but things like little experiences that you have. You know, so you may, for instance, you may buy a car because of the driving experience, and you may buy the car because of, you know, the things that you know, all the equipment, etc., that comes with it. But if you have a bad experience at the service center, next time you will not think of buying that car. Or if you have a bad experience repairing the car, next time you will not think of buying the car. So having insights about the 360-degree experiences, having an insight about what do consumers really feel, what your brand stands for, is very, very important. Otherwise, the trust is a very broad sort of a you know, factor to decode.
So, you know, I have a fairly large LinkedIn following, and on my LinkedIn profile, I have this featured article there called Building Your Own Personal Brand, right? So, where it comes to purpose. Now, see, trust, I believe, is finally about your personal purpose and the brand's purpose, right? Now, that purpose is what needs to be uncovered, right? So, what Manish talked about, right, where you had empathy with the consumers, you realized that the woman of the household, right, is struggling at that time. A lot of the campaigns like Share the Load, right, is one of those which sort of worked upon it, because you said, I want to go beyond just selling my product as to helping the consumer unlock what they are thinking, right? Now, question is, how do we unlock what we are thinking? How do we get to the heart of what's really going on? And I like this video by Simon Sinek called Start with the Why, right? Which is on TED Talk. He's got some 40 million views. He really talks about the fact that, you know, in your brain, you have the neocortex, which is the outer brain, which knows language and speaks. But the mammalian brain inside thinks in visuals and pictures, right? So what we need to do as brands is to find the core, and what we need to do as individuals also is to visualize our future, visualize what really drives us. What's our why, right? And that why, once you're able to unlock that why, when you're able to unlock what really drives you, what is at the core of your brands, what is the real need that they service, trust is then an outcome. Right, so that I believe is a core towards building that kind of a consumer empathy with consumers as well.
Well, very briefly, I would say that leadership has a great role in building trust and ensuring that it is maintained. You know, because it's the leader who creates the vision and articulates the values of the organization. You know, so the leader has to ensure that all the channels of the organization speak the same language. They articulate the values which are the profound values of the organization. You know, there should be no different. HR shouldn't be recruiting somebody or advertising something which is contrary to the value of the organization. Marketing shouldn't speak a different language. I would only remind you of the story of what was the Ronaldo versus Coke. You know, Ronaldo was going to have an interview, and somebody, the marketing team of Coke, put 2 cans of Coke on his table in front of him. When he came, he immediately pushed them aside. And next day, the Coke's valuation, market capitalization came down by $4 billion. So that's the mismatch of value systems. Ronaldo is a fitness freak, but Coke is not in the business of fitness, right? So there was a lack of authenticity of the marketing communication that was attempted. So that should be adhered to, authenticity should be adhered to. Remember, trust is something which comes on barefoot, but goes back on horseback. So it's easier to lose trust than to gain it. Thank you.
So one thing, I would be signing my book in the book signing area after the session. In case anybody wants to pick up a copy of The Practical Marketeer and get my sign, feel free to join me after the event.
So we'll open it for questions. Any questions there? Yeah, all right. If we have time, I also have a question actually. I have several, but one, if we have enough time.
Yeah. Good morning. My name is Vikram Karve. My question is to the marketing expert and the consumer research expert. What will be the impact of artificial intelligence or AI on marketing and consumer research and engagement?
Yeah, so I think AI is already impacting a lot on consumer insights in the research space. So typically, if you look at, there are a lot of repeatable jobs to be done, which have to be done repeatedly again and again in the same manner. AI is already taking over those. And then on top of that, collating some themes by looking at lots and lots of data, saying that these are the themes that are emergent, is something that AI is doing. But I think the human ingenuity on top of that to connect the dots still remains a human domain. Because you need, while you have a lot of data, you have a lot of information, you need a lot of creativity to sort of connect the dots and to think about differently, saying, hey, that observation which is seemingly different or contradictory to what I'm seeing here, is that really a contradiction, or is there an insight in the contradiction? You know, so that human ingenuity still is important in connecting the dots and getting to the heart of the insight, which I think AI is a little away from as yet.
So I'll take a slightly different take onto the question. For me, the biggest use case of ChatGPT or artificial intelligence is my 11-year-old. He uses it to solve his Marathi homework. He doesn't know Marathi, but ChatGPT thankfully does. So I would say any new technology is essentially about curiosity, right? It's about curiosity towards figuring out what can it give you, right? And what can artificial intelligence give you? It can give you a number of things from a marketeer standpoint. One, it can give you fun ads. So if you've all seen the ad of 5-star, make artificial intelligence dumb again. I think that's a great way of using artificial intelligence for fun and creativity, because it's a passion point. Everybody wants to talk about it. That ad does well. Artificial intelligence is a great area for PR. So I think what Cadbury Celebrations did with, they won a Cannes, where they essentially said that you see this ad and the name of the local retailer will pop up. Right? That is a very interesting way of using creativity, artificial intelligence for activation. Artificial intelligence is used extensively by us in telecom, because for the last 10 years, we have been building propensity models. These are models to say that if somebody does this, maybe they are also likely to do that, and hence this is the kind of product or service, right? So there are more efficient ways of selling. I think an Ola and Uber do that fabulously well. They're able to match the speed with which you want a car and how much are you willing to pay for it. Right? And they are inversely related. So they are able to create products and service. And then of course there is, the fact that it's eventually a tool. It doesn't have a mind of its own, at least for now. But how you can use it to complement your mind, I think is where the secret lies.
Yeah, I'll just say, as of now, artificial intelligence, AI, it can think, but it cannot feel. So now we are waiting for it to feel.
You never know, the time might be around the corner.
Just to know, you're giving them ideas, right, of using ChatGPT for completing Marathi homework.
And, but I can vouch for that.
Exactly.
No, anything they use ChatGPT, we know how to fix that. Because we have enough software to figure out.
Can I add a bit there? Yesterday I attended a session, very good session here on AI. And the gentleman told us that these days AI is reading the books and decoding the emotions in the book. What is the emotion behind the book of the different characters? And based on that, they are creating advertisements, and sending it to the specific segments, So that's a very beautiful creative use of AI. Now, I was think in these terms, that okay, you have a billboard with an advertisement, and there's an AI camera there. As you look at it, the AI camera captures your emotions and your face. Now with your face, your identity is with the company. Your name, your address, your gender, your racial, profile, everything is there. And at the same time, your emotions are captured and decoded. Based on that, you can create ads for that person, and that will add to very deep personalization of the advertiser. I think Saurabh and
Yeah, that's already being done.
will
That's one of the use cases, yes.
can know it better. They are the market. Personalized, deep
Yeah.
personalization to the individual level.
Unfortunately, we're running out of time. We have just like 1 minute for a very, very quick, short question, very
Yeah.
direct question. And
Yeah, this is Ashish. I wanted to understand, like, see, it's a content world at this point in time. It's a knowledge world, right? There's so much of content that's getting published now and then, right? Whether people who are working in organizations or entrepreneurs, everybody, right? So, let's say if I have a product, okay, if I have my own product, my company, okay, and I'm not funded by big investors, so how do I market myself in this, exploding world?
Should I give that a try? So, one of the things that I had just mentioned in my talk is that on my LinkedIn page, I have put up a featured article on personal branding. How do you build your personal brand, right? Because essentially, social media, what it is allowing you today is that they're giving you social media as a media device. It's a way to reach out to people, right? It's a way to reach out to a very large group of people. Right, and with say the following that I've built, I have a say following around 45,000 odd followers, right, and I'm able to make posts out there which can get lakhs of views, right. Now the question is how? If you put a post on your product, nobody's going to be interested, right? Unfortunately, and that's a fact of life, right? If I put out a post on, my product or service, I'll get the least views. So how do you really join the dots, right? The way you join the dots is by understanding that on social media, where there is a lot of content, you have a consumption audience and you have a communication audience. The communication audience is whom you want to really sell your product to. That's the end consumer. It could be business houses, it could be B2B, it could be anybody, right? But joining you and your communication audience is a consumption audience. This consumption audience are all the people sitting in this room. Consumption audience are those people who are interested in engaging with your content. Are you able to figure out the passion points of people who want to engage with you? And are you putting out relevant content which adds value to their life? If you are able to do that, if you are able to identify the passion points of your consumption audience, create relevant content where your product or service may or may not slip in. Right? That gives you reach. And then when you get that kind of a reach, you are able to get authentic reach. You are able to get reach because they are reaching out to you from an authentic engagement standpoint and not just because you're selling your product. Right? That essentially is the essence of, say, personal branding, building a large content strategy, and hence eventually taking your product or service to the masses.
The only thing I would add is that create content for your consumption audiences, which is relevant to them, but in a manner that's highly engaging and enjoyable, because otherwise they won't watch it.